Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's start a whole new series here, this one based on your suggestions. I'm starting this one off with a past suggestion, and in fact one was that about a year ago or so. So thank you so much for your patience everyone on these videos. This one has to do with an entry that is once again based on a long lost dinosaur. You know how much I love these particular suggestions, the idea that somewhere out there in this world there is a wonderful dinosaur still roaming those areas. Boutonjour is one of my more famous ones. The Murray is another one that I've done, others as well. So this continues this trend involving dinosaur-like cryptids. This is one that's found deep in the Amazonian forests of Brazil. So if you happen to go there one day, who knows, you may come across this creature. But it has also, at least its particular dinosaur species, has been featured in other films. So it has to do with this. It's a creature that has a very short name. It's known as the Stoa. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the fascinating info associated with this long-lost dinosaur. So what is this Stoa? The Stoa is a dinosaur again found within the Amazonian forest, deep within those forests. In fact, you're looking at a picture of that area. This is a place that's called Serra de Curupira. I hope I'm saying that correctly. But yes, if you go there, good luck trying to find this dinosaur, because at least based on what you see here, practically every square inch is covered by some kind of foliage. So I could totally see and imagine something like this dinosaur just happily living within that area peacefully, as you will, without having any interference, maybe every now and then, from humans. Humans wouldn't know that it's there. It wouldn't know that humans are around unless it happens to run across it. And I'll list some examples here, in fact, of its sightings. But imagine that. Imagine also deep in the late at night in this jungle, and in the far distance you can hear this Stoa yelling its roar, and then realizing that yes, indeed, you are within its territory. But first, let's talk about its characteristics. So it goes by various sizes. I was reading one thing involving this dinosaur, which is supposed to resemble a Carnotaurus. Remember I was mentioning that it's something that a species that was involved in the film. There was that Disney movie, one of the first CGI films from Disney called Dinosaurs, and it had this creature, the Carnotaurus, as one of the villains, I guess, within the film. Well, such is the case here with this species. It's pretty much a Carnotaurus. It has all the distinctive features of it, but the sizes seems to be different. In fact, I was reading Run Report that was stating a witness claiming it was the size of a buffalo. So not exactly too large, no, when it comes to that. And then there are other reports, other sightings, where this is a creature that is around 20 to 30 feet long or so. So much bigger now, probably along the size of your average T-Rex, much more dinosaur-like, in other words. But otherwise, everything else, all its other characteristics are the same. It has the two horns associated with a Carnotaurus. It has the teeny tiny little arms that, for whatever reason, those type of dinosaurs still or had back in the past, and maybe to even this day. And then of course those huge gigantic Godzilla-like legs to support its massive body, and no doubt to also have a quick run and jump. More on that in a minute when it comes to its attack. And then also it seems to have these hard scales that are more defensive than anything involving just a physical, like a look to it. More on that also in a minute. And its skin seems to be more on the lines of a grayish color. So whether it's adapted to the jungles to this day in terms of its size, because a very large dinosaur, even when in the thick of this forest, would still be seen, maybe it adapted itself and it truly got smaller and smaller to be the size of a buffalo, or whether it's truly still the size of a real life dinosaur, who knows. But at least with regards to those two reports, you can see the variances of it. Now we can talk about the experiences of the Stoa. So that also kind of varies too. There was one report I was reading that said the very first, at least reported sighting, not that it hasn't been there before, and no doubt that the natives around that area have seen it for hundreds of years, but at least the very first reported sighting may have been 1912, but another report was stating that it might have been 1920. So I don't know. Throw it up in the air when it comes to those specific dates. But there was a tribe that had someone in there. I think his name was Lord John, and he was there with some of his squad, some of his military squad, and they were there with some of the natives. I don't know exactly why they were in that area, but there they were camping around the lake. And then all of a sudden, the Stoa made its presence known. In fact, the natives discovered the Stoa first. The way the story goes is they began screaming Stoa, Stoa, like they began saying that all out loud. That was its name. And when they did so, they saw that this creature jumped down actually on them. Not just one, but several of them. So this was a pack of this Stoa. And the way they jumped down and they killed some of the natives right then and there. Remember I was mentioning earlier involving those powerful legs. That seems to be its attack. It probably gets on some kind of high ground, and then when it has its prey somewhere underneath it, it jumps down and then either squashes them, kills them, impales them with its large talons. Who knows? But that was the case here for those poor, unfortunate folks. And then the attack was on. The way the experience goes, Lord John was describing it. In fact, he stated there was a large cry of alarm. All these Stoa started attacking. There were more natives, though, around 50 or so within that location. And they all went into some kind of cave. And when they did so, this creature or the set of creatures were still attacking, but they were fighting back. It turns out, though, that Lord John and his military squad tried to fight with traditional rifles, but they found this. Whatever these scales were that were on this creature, remember I was mentioning that it was more of a defensive feature than anything else. It was repelling the bullets to their shock and surprise. Whenever they fired upon it, it was as if this thing just started deflecting it left and right. It was amazing to them, no doubt thinking that all of a sudden they were going to have the upper hand, but as it turns out they didn't. What saved the day was this. Some of the natives, no doubt having experience dealing with this Stoa, they had ready with them poisoned arrows. These poisoned arrows were fired upon them. In fact, the way Lord John described it was fired upon them by the hundreds. I think that was more of an exaggeration, but who knows? But these arrows hit the creatures. They impaled them little by little, and when they did so, at first they got a little dizziness, but after so much of these arrows hitting them, two of the animals finally fell over, and it sounded like the rest of them escaped. And when that happened, then these natives decided to celebrate, and as they did so, they started eating the bodies of these two fallen Carnotaurus, or these two fallen Stoa. So right there, right before I read that last line, I was thinking and hoping this will be great. This was an opportunity to try to find some proof of these Stoa, even if they're not, even if the body deteriorates after death, there's still going to be some kind of bone, something else in there. But no, it seems like the way that this body was consumed, whatever happened to the bones afterward remains mysterious, and there's no traces of it. But that is still an in-depth experience in this case from Lord John and his encounter there. So pretty fascinating stuff. This is not a creature that you want to come across, because by the time you see it, it'll be pretty late. And in fact, its grayish color seems to be a perfect camouflage when it comes to being within those jungles. All it takes is just it hiding within some kind of foliage, large foliage with some deep shadows. And then when it happens, you'll hear it first, probably before you see it, and then it's too little, too late. Pretty much the only other interesting thing about the Stoa has to do with the fact that this creature, if it truly is found, it could be, again, something involving a cousin, like I was saying, of the Carnotaurus, but maybe it's a whole new species within the Carnotaurus. So I was thinking the first thing, when it did that attack, the way it jumped, it reminded me of the way that the velociraptors attacked within the Jurassic Park film. Remember those prominent scenes where they would run and they would do a huge jump and then use their powerful legs to just pretty much body slam people to the ground. I'm wondering if this new creature, it's a different variation of the Carnotaurus. Even though it resembles it most closely, it's just through the passage of time, millions of years, growing smaller in some cases, adapting to the jungle. It could just be a whole new species. We call it a Carnotaurus, but it's rightfully so when it's called a Stoa, as far as being being something else different. By the way, I don't know why it's called a Stoa specifically. I tried to see like what it stands for, if it's a shortened version of some name or if it's something else entirely different. Who knows? But if someone knows that information, please do so. And also, if anyone has more info about any other encounters with the Stoa, like any type of eyewitness reports, please do so as well. Apparently, the last eyewitness from that time period, either 1912 or 1920, was also interviewed later on in the 1970s, and they still, to that very time period, decades later, started describing the attack, whatever occurred from that pack of Stoas. So it goes to show that this was something, an encounter clearly that would have lasted, that had quite an impression, that would have lasted easily that long for so many decades. So what do you guys think about this long lost dinosaur, the Stoa? Is it something else worthy enough within the idea of dinosaurs out there in this world? One of my videos, in other words, like the Bunanjor, the Murray, in other words, is this something that is truly there to this day? Anybody from Brazil, anybody from that location, or happens to be stopping by that area that has more info, please post those comments below too. So, but yes, please continue your suggestions, everyone. I'm gonna go ahead and do some more of these videos soon. So, all right, everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.